grease, balls, spinning. Ball diffs in RC drifting might kind of sound cool until you actually drive one. People swear by the tunability and ease of operation of a ball diff. Today, I'll break down why I ditched the ball diff and switched to a gear diff, and why the CLSD might still be king.
Sideways on the asphalt we rain. Best tunes pumping, got that shred crap in the...
So in my last RC drift tuning video, where I talked about differentials and what's the difference between some of the most common used differentials, a lot of you guys made it known that I left out one very important differential, the ball differential. There's a reason that I left it out, because I think for what's available on the market right now and what you can buy, the options available, I'd still believe that a gear differential and the CLSD, even a spool, is a better option for drifting compared to a ball differential. Now, I got tons and tons of comments of, what about the ball differential? A bunch of us use ball differentials. Just like I've mentioned many times before with RC drift tuning, there's so many variables involved with RC drift tuning that one option isn't going to work for everybody's car out there. For me, I have had experience with the ball differential and I didn't like it for a number of reasons, which I explained in the comments. So for me, they're just inconsistent. The way a ball differential is controlled, and I'll put a diagram up of the internals of a ball differential, but it's pressure plates in between ball bearings that spin and rotate, and then there's a screw with a spring that creates the tension on the two plates of the ball differential. There's a number of problems with this. The first being that it's an open set. So dust, grime, and the friction is controlled by pressure and then the grease inside the differential. With drifting, especially RC drifting, we're operating these cars at very high RPMs. So the centrifugal force of that differential spinning is constantly spitting grease out, making those balls, the ball bearings inside those two plates, are seeing a constant change in friction and how much grease is inside that differential, along with the frictional force of that spring pushing those two plates together. One of the downsides of the ball differential is that you're going to have to rebuild it and replace the grease inside of it. And then getting that spring tension to be the same as what you were driving on before is very impossible, and it's not a measurable rate that you have to twist that screw 2 or 3 times to apply the same pressure onto those two friction surfaces. So it leads to some tuning issues with a ball differential. Because this is a friction operated differential with grease, you'll probably have to end up rebuilding them more often than you would, say, a gear differential or a CLSD. The type of grease, the plates, the 2 aluminum plates that are in action with the ball bearings can wear out, especially them being aluminum and then having a steel bearing in there. It can eat grooves into the plate of the differential, meaning that you'd have to replace parts more often than not. And then, like I said before, having RC drift differentials operate at super high RPMs, the centrifugal force of the spinning of the differential is flinging that grease out of the diff. So meaning that the friction that the bearing's having with the plate is constantly changing and in a constant state of change, creating a bunch of variations in how it's gripping and biting and applying the torque to the wheels. A few other things, they can be tricky to rebuild. You're pulling out tiny little bearings and putting them in the groove, or putting them into their bearing plate. It just seems, in my mind, a more tedious process. And I'm not saying it's the end all be all. Don't use a ball differential. If you've found success using a ball differential, by all means. I'm not here to tell you that's the wrong thing to do. This is a hobby and we're supposed to be having fun. And I think the biggest part of RC drifting is getting seat time and driving your car as much as you can. All I'm saying is, for me, with my experience on our smooth, polished concrete track, I did not have consistent action with a ball differential. I found much more consistent action, number one being a spool. That's going to be the most consistent differential, where you have the same type of reaction and feeling every lap after lap. After that, the gear differential. It's just a simple, easy to use differential, and it allows you to feel what driving with a car with an open diff feels like in drifting. It starts to get you to that plateau of driving with a lot of grip. Now, drifting and grip is an interesting term, because for a beginner, you might say these cars are driving on plastic tires and you don't have a lot of grip. There's a lot of ways we add mechanical grip into RC drift cars with rear end geometry. So having more toe in on the rear wheels is going to give you more forward bite and pull out of a corner. And that, tuned with an open differential, can provide a lot of forward bite in a RC drift car. There's also so many variables involved. So you can change the way your rear camber links are set up and how the camber progression happens on the car throughout the sweep of a corner as you're drifting. And then the other thing to think about with drift cars that I see numerous conversations about, drift cars aren't driving straight, and you shouldn't be driving straight in a drift car. You're drifting. So the cars are essentially always loaded up one side to another. The only time they're not is in transition, where you're transitioning from one direction to the other direction. Those wheels are going through their camber sweep with the suspension movement. So there's so many factors involved that it's not just a differential that's going to make or break your drifting experience. Adding complication to all the other factors on top of drifting, in my mind, create an unnecessary need for adding more variables into your drifting experience, especially if you're new, especially if you're just getting into it. That's why in my last video I said driving with the spool is the best option you can have. It's going to give you the most consistent feedback, and you're going to be able to learn fine throttle control, especially with RC drifting. One of the most important factors is we're essentially driving these cars with our throttle, not with the wheel. The gyro's doing a lot of the counter steering, and we're just finely putting the car where we want it with the steering, but mainly driving it with the amount of throttle and the RPM we're going through and the amount of RPM that we're giving the wheels. So a few other factors here that I have on my list of why I didn't have a good experience with ball differentials and why I don't like ball differentials. The durability. We talked about the tuning and the rebuilding process, and then on top of that, there's also the driving style considerations. Now, on loose surfaces where the car's loading up onto one side of the wheel, what I notice is that there's more instability, if that makes sense, in the car. So the ball diff is going to open up a lot faster and not as consistent at a linear rate, let's say, as a gear differential, where that gear differential is going to open up at the same rate every time. The ball differential sometimes with more force is just going to open up a lot faster. But a ball differential is going to lead to more inconsistent action when drifting. So here's a crude example. Aluminum plate, grease, balls, spinning. So while it feels smooth, let's think about what this plate's doing in the differential. It's spinning really, really fast. All that grease is going to get tossed out of this differential. All the dust, dirt, and grime is going to get in there and stick to those bearings and change the friction at which that rotation is happening. On top of that, aluminum is a very soft metal, builds grooves, and is not as dense of a material as a steel bearing. So while it feels smooth upon initial building, if you have to rebuild that differential, get that spring tension exactly right, on top of Loctiting the screw, it's going to be different than what it would be with a gear differential. Just not consistent. This doesn't work for me. In summary, while ball differentials offer excellent performance and tunability for experienced drivers, I think they come at a higher cost with maintenance and repairs and replacing parts, and just being somewhat unpredictable compared to other options out there on the market. Especially for beginners who are just getting into RC drifting, I think it's really important to have a very simple, less complicated car so there's less things to focus on when driving. I think a huge aspect of RC drifting is just getting seat time and getting the repetition to kind of train your brain and your hand-eye coordination to do what you want the car to do. While I haven't had good experience with ball differentials in my past, I still think that the CLSD is the best option for a differential at any level of drifting. But for a beginner, maybe starting out with a spool is a smarter, wiser move, just because you're going to have the most consistent feeling car every time you enter. Anytime you transition, you'll be able to predict and understand what that car is doing. And then when you upgrade to a ball differential, a gear differential, or a CLSD, you're starting to understand what it's like to drive a car with more grip. And there's so many factors that go into to tuning an RC drift car, that one part, like a differential, isn't going to necessarily be a make or break in being able to drift the car. I still feel like I would be able to drive a car just as good as I can now with whatever differential I'd put in it, from a spool to a fully open CLSD to even a ball differential. But my findings with the ball differential of being unpredictable, having the higher maintenance costs, losing that grease out of the diff, there's just things that I didn't like. And in my mind, I think the other options out there are better choices to have a more consistent, predictable car for driving. So there's an old saying that goes back to even real race cars, but it's keep it stupid simple. That's a saying made for, let's say you're in a competition and something happens or there's something wrong with the car. You're able to quickly diagnose, figure out, and fix what's going on inside that car, rather than, let's say, having to take apart your entire differential, rebuild it, figure out what type of grease is in there or what's binding. Is the screw too tight? Is the screw too loose? Did the spring come off? Is it in there backwards? There's just more variables than I feel like what would be needed for even just running a spool. Back to what I said at the very beginning, drifting, this hobby is very subjective. I'm not going to continue to use something that I'm not enjoying rather than using a part that I've used for years. I know that works very well and I know how to drive with it. I'm also not a competition drifter, so I'm not having to put it in the zones or ride the wall lap after lap. I feel like I can, but I'm not out there to prove that I'm a better driver than anyone else or see what the judges think of me. I'm out there to have fun with my friends at the track, and that's what we do week after week. And we're able to drive laps together until our eyes dry out and you can't really blink anymore. So for me, this hobby is exactly that. It's a hobby. I'm here to have fun with it. I'm here to share my knowledge and my experience with you guys and not necessarily say buy this part or don't buy this part. I'm here to lend what I've learned in real world of motorsports down to the 10th scale world of RC drifting. And with tuning all these little cars and using different parts and stuff like that, there comes a lot of opinion, and everyone's experiences are different. Everyone's cars are set up different, the weight's different, the traction, the tires, the springs, the oils you're using, everything. There's just so many variables. I can't necessarily say this is the best part for your car. You need to buy this part, because everyone's going to have different experiences while they're drifting. This video was mainly just made for fun. I know I got so many comments about what about a ball differential? What about a ball differential? This is just me giving my opinion. I'm not saying they're terrible, they're trash, they're garbage. I'm just saying I don't like them. These are the reasons why I don't like them, and I'm going to stick to the CLSD for now. At the end of the day, the best diff is the one that suits your style best. But for me, I'm after consistency, and if I'm after consistency or control, I'm going to stick with the gear differential or the CLSD. Let me know what you guys are running down below in the comments below. I'd love to hear what's working for you and what type of track you're driving on. It's just cool to kind of hear the different tuning styles and how people set their cars up. A lot of the times I hear these setups and I'm like, whoa, that would never work for me. But because everything in this hobby is so subjective and tuning is so different from car to chassis to driver, it's just one of those things where it's kind of eye-opening for me to see what's working for other people. So I'm not here to down talk anyone or say this is bad or you need to buy this. I'm just here sharing my own experiences with RC drifting and sharing the love of the hobby and kind of building this community. It's so awesome to see this channel grow to over 15,000 subscribers. When I first started this 4 years ago, I never would have thought we'd be at a position like this and have so many people from all around the world chiming in and leaving comments and sharing their own experiences with me. So that's super cool. And then moving forward with Shredcraft, I want to know more of what you guys want to hear. I want to know if you guys want to have more of these RC drift tuning discussions. Maybe we could do some live streams, have some group hangouts, stuff like that, and just talk about all these different setups that everyone's running all over the world. It's super cool to hear. And I really appreciate all of you guys tuning in, liking, commenting, and subscribing. So make sure, if you like this type of video, I know it was a bit of a rant, me going on and on, sharing a silly demonstration. I'm here to have fun. I hope you guys are here to have fun. I hope you guys enjoy watching the videos. I really appreciate you tuning in. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Hit that thumbs up button for me, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. So be sure to tune in for more awesome RC content from Shredcraft RC. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace.
When your hair like a flow, flow, rubber burning RC, churning smoke in the air, phantom drifting doors, kissing, we don't play fair. Shredcraft logo on the whip.